And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Obama dedicated the signing of health care legislation yesterday to a number of people, including his mother, S. Ann Dunham Sotero.
Today, I'm signing this reform bill into law on behalf of my mother, who argued with insurance companies even as she battled cancer in her final days.
The health care legislative process and its frenetic endgame prompted the president to postpone a trip to the country where his mother raised him for several years of his childhood, Indonesia. While his health care bill is considered by many a huge step forward, Obama simultaneously, and with far less scrutiny, taking what many human rights activists consider to be a huge step backward with Indonesia. News is breaking about the role of the Indonesian military in the murder of political activists in the province of Aceh last year and the lead-up to local elections there. Investigative journalist Alan Nairn is facing possible arrest for the expose that shows the U.S.-backed Indonesian armed forces assassinated a series of civilian activists last year. The story is breaking at a time when the White House is engaged in fierce behind-the-scenes negotiations with Congress on whether to restore aid to the Indonesian military, including one of its most notorious elements, the Special Forces Command known as Kopassus. President Obama had been scheduled to visit Indonesia this week, but the trip was postponed until June due to the health care debate. Since Alan Nairn broke the news of the assassination program here on Democracy Now! Last Friday, the Indonesian press has been buzzing with the allegations. A military spokesman told the Jakarta Globe that the military is considering legal action against Alan Nairn. Earlier today, Alan issued a public challenge to the Indonesian military to arrest him so that he could face off with the military in open court. Alan Nairn is no stranger to the Indonesian military. In 1991, Alan and I survived a massacre in East Timor when more than 270 Timorese were killed by U.S.-backed Indonesian soldiers. In 1999, Alan sneaked back into East Timor and reported on the Indonesian military atrocities there, as the Indonesian soldiers burned much of East Timor to the ground. They arrested Alan, but he continued reporting from prison. Well, last night we reached Alan in Indonesia to discuss the latest developments.
In the article, I described how the Indonesian armed forces, which are armed and trained by the United States, have been running a program of assassinating political activists. And I described in detail their assassinations in Aceh in 2009, in the run-up to the local elections there, where at least 8 activists for the pro-independence PA, Partai Aceh, were assassinated. And I quote senior Indonesian officials as saying that these assassinations were coordinated on the regional level by a general named Sunarko, a Kopassus general. I reached Sunarko on the phone, and he acknowledged to me that his men were involved in these assassinations. But he said, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this was a project of the military as an institution. He also, this general who ran the assassination program, told me that he was an enthusiastic supporter of President Obama's plan to restore full aid to the Indonesian armed forces. And he then went on to describe in detail his own training by the United States. He says they've been training him since the 1980s. He regards them as close partners. And he loves Obama's plan because he says it will make the partnership still more intimate, in his words. General Sunarko, the Kopassus general who in Timor in 1999 helped run the militias that burned 80% of the buildings in Timor, that conducted church massacres, etc., and who now has been running this assassinations program in Aceh. He said that he was trained by the U.S. military, the U.S. Pacific Command, mobile training teams in jungle warfare, logistics, and many other subjects. And he said that he was most recently trained by the U.S. In 2006. So he's a very enthusiastic backer of Obama's plan to restore aid for the U.S. military, and specifically for Kopassus, the Special Forces, the most notorious unit of that military. Now, in response to this, a few hours ago, the story broke in the Indonesian press. It ran on TV. The government press agency put out a series of stories about it. Kompas, the main newspaper, had 5 or 6 stories about it. And the Indonesian army is now threatening to arrest me. They apparently are threatening to charge me with criminal defamation, which under various Indonesian laws can carry a sentence of 4 to 6 years. And I welcome this threat. I just put out a statement on my website saying, I welcome this threat. They should arrest me so that we can have a face-off in open court. And I will describe in open court before the Indonesian public how the Indonesian armed forces are assassinating civilians. I will detail the massacres, the disappearances, etc. And I will attempt to call TNI generals as witnesses and question them under oath, and will also attempt to call U.S. officials as witnesses. U.S. officials from the White House, the CIA, the Pentagon, the State Department, and ask them under oath to tell the Indonesian public in a trial why they have been giving arms and training year after year after year to an Indonesian armed forces as they've been killing civilians. As the U.S. has seen the results of their arming and training of people like General Sunarko, of thousands of other top officers, the U.S. has continued to pour in weapons and training to facilitate these murders. So I want to get a chance to put the CIA station chiefs, the U.S. military attachés to Indonesia, the generals from the Pentagon, the national security advisors, maybe the presidents if that's legally possible, put them on the stand here in Indonesia in court and ask them under oath, why did you do this? Why have you done this to the civilians of Indonesia? And ask the same questions to Indonesian generals. So I'm challenging the Indonesian military, if they're serious, if they really believe their own denials, I'm challenging them to arrest me.
But, Alan, you're talking about President Obama saying he's going to restore aid to Kopassus and the Indonesian military. These killings took place in 2009. Were they getting the aid then?
The Indonesian military has always been getting aid from the U.S. After the Dili massacre in '91, which we survived, the activist movement which grew up, including the East Timor Action Network, we succeeded in cutting off much of the aid. And especially after the 1999 massacre in Timor, after the Timorese voted for independence, almost all of it was cut off, but there's always been some. And over recent years, it has been slowly restored. And right now, the Indonesian Defense Ministry claims that 2,800 Indonesian military people are right now getting training in the United States. The U.S. is now selling some weapons and equipment to the armed forces. The CIA and various covert U.S. units have extensive programs going on with the Indonesian military and police. So yes, they're getting U.S. backing right now, and Obama wants to strengthen that backing. If Obama succeeds in going ahead with his plan, if he's not stopped by Congress and the U.S. public, this will effectively be the ultimate green light to the Indonesian armed forces and their dreaded special forces, Kopassus, a green light to go ahead and do what they want to the Indonesian public. And many of the survivors of their terror are very worried about this.
We'll return to my interview with investigative journalist Alan Nairn in Indonesia in a minute. He faces possible arrest. Stay with us.